story, but unfortunately,
I mean, again, right?
I only find a way of finding
They might, whatever the narrative is, whatever the truth is, at the end.
angle just to add a little richness to it. We mentioned China earlier on. Of course, one of the fascinating connection points between higher energy prices and transportation, living further out, is how are you going to get around? And that takes you to the EV story. And of course, a lot of people are now thinking about EV as potentially a solution. This is an article suggests that the price of EVs go up as petrol pain kicks in. And they also revealed some suburbs, so Sydney suburbs here, where there were 0 EV chargers, including Fairfield, Carlingford, Epping, Sanssouci, and Sutherland, to give a few examples. So there's a real big issue there. Oh, and the other little killer angle here, which I thought was quite amusing and takes us right back to WeChat Chatland. China becomes Australia's largest auto supplier. So China has now overtaken Japan as the top producer for Australia. Of course, as this little post says, most people don't realize Australia makes no cars. Every new car is imported, and now more are coming from China. And with the demand for EVs continuing to go higher, well, you and I have talked about some of the consequences of buying EVs. Some of them unintended.
Yeah. Well, this is why. Look, there are a lot of there's a lot of information that is not passed on to the mainstream media here from what happens in China. This is where Dusty and Evan get the WeChat Chatter news from them. They've told us there are a lot of real videos. It's not AI. The real videos of spontaneous combustion. There's I've said before, and the WeChat Chatters have told us if you have a prang with your BYD or anything that comes in from China, pretty much write it off. Because once you have and it only has to be a small prang, doesn't have to be a big prang, and things could go a real pear shape. But there's a lot more that's not being told. There are a lot more stories that aren't being told. Not only Chinese EVs or European EVs or even Tesla for that matter, but you've got to start thinking you're sitting on a power pack, and you've got all these. It's bad enough when you've got your phone to your ear most of the day. You end up with a headache. Can you imagine being sitting on top of these batteries and surrounded by all this digital noise that all around you? I mean, something's got to be happening to your body. But these are other reports that obviously the WeChat chatters talk about that they go up on WeChat for just half a minute, and then they get taken off real quick. And that's further from that is I still haven't heard any further discussions in which you and I spoke about before even the mainstream started talking about the security issues around EV, and what information are they really gathering, and where is all that information going to at the end of the day? If people are saying that your mobile device and all those devices around your home are recording everything you do, and then all of a sudden you can be talking about I feel like a bag of peanuts, and next thing you know, in your social media pages you got all this advertising for peanuts. Shit, I mean, you got to really ask a lot of questions. But there's one other point that again nobody's talking about, and that is, remember when you and I were talking early last year, and we were saying that the WeChat chatters are saying that BYD is the Evergrande of the EV industry, and that's still a play, Martin. That is still a play. It is the most subsidized car manufacturing plant in China, and they are burning. They are absolutely burning money left, right, and center. So what's going to happen when that plant shuts down? What happens to servicing? What happens to ongoing maintenance? So these are the things that people need to take. I'm not saying don't go out and buy an EV. I'm just saying be very, very careful. Don't fall into the trap of just getting something cheap for the sake of getting something cheap. Then you go back to the local infrastructure, right? Then you go back to the local infrastructure and the topography and the geography of Australia. So. Look, I've thought about getting an EV. I'm pulling currently myself personally. I pull close to 900 k's a week, right? Because of where I live, and I'm not going to change that. But with my truck, I often pull the trailer, and I have to shift things around. I love my truck. I've got a sedan. I've got a smaller sedan, but I'm mainly in the truck because of its horsepower, because of what I need to do, and because of other needs. Now, if I was to get an EV as well, I would have to upgrade I'll have to get solar. I'll be looking at getting solar, and then with solar comes a battery pack. Yes, there are government subsidies, but who's paying for that? The taxpayers are going to be subsidising my lifestyle in a way. So there's all these added things at play. Then let's take this train of thought a little bit deeper. Now, you've got to retrofit high-rise developments all around Sydney in order to cater for EVs, right? How difficult that's going to be? How you've got to like we've discussed again before, in the old 3-story walk-up units, the distribution of power to each individual apartment, was 32 to 33 amps. An induction cooktop pulls 33 amps. If you've got a 600 millimeter induction cooktop, anything bigger than that, and you could be pulling 35, which you have to upgrade the circuit boards, you have to upgrade the mains and the building. I mean, it's upgrade, and you have to get more power from the street to the building. I mean, this is not a cheap exercise, right? And then you look at distances, and as you said, what the last point, we don't have the infrastructure. We don't have the power stations. There are people that have been documenting on TikTok, traveling around Australia, that on their Teslas and whatnots, they've been TikToking and they're all stuck because the charging stations out in Whoop Whoop, the diesel engines that charge up the charging stations so you can charge your car with, the diesel engines don't have any diesel. So there you have it. So if they really wanted to get serious, if the government really wanted to get serious, they would start putting in more charging stations. I mean, we're something like 15,000 charging stations short. I mean, I've been to China twice, and I've seen how that in Guangzhou and in the outskirts of Guangzhou, and gone on the train from Guangzhou from Guangzhou to Hong Kong, and seeing light and seeing how that they've got the infrastructure at play, but they've also got 12,000 bloody coal-powered plants. So I don't know. It's very confusing out there. I think the people are confused. The government's even more confused, and the politicians are the Fruit Loops running as they say, the nutters running.